Hi, good evening. Today is the 9th of May 2021, and this is a look back at the news from Zimmer and Peacock for the week starting the 3rd of May 2021. So every week we like to do a sort of retrospective look back at the news from ZP for this week, and as I say, this is that retrospective look. So some of the news that we put out this week at ZP, we're a little unusual that we're known for biosensors. We're known sometimes for screen printed electrodes, but when you really scratch the surface with us, it's actually quite unusual. So just sort of looking at gold electrodes alone, I think it's worth noting that with gold electrodes alone, that we actually can make gold electrodes by vapor deposition, by PCB fabrication, and also by gold screen printing. So with Zimmer and Peacock, when we're on customers' programs or on projects, we actually, we're not limited to just screen printed electrodes. And I think we just kind of put out a little note there this week that kind of said, well, there's actually lots of ways of making a gold electrode, and the way we choose to do it depends really on what the program or the project needs at the time. So that was just a sort of little technical note that we put out there this week, that there's lots of ways of making a gold electrode, and at ZP I think we're one of the few sort of ISO 13485 contract development and contract manufacturing businesses that uses all these different techniques for making a gold electrode. So that was just sort of a little note that we put out there this week. Now, something that was quite fun that we participated in recently, we were contacted round about Christmas time 2020 by a cool guy in the US called Andy McDougall, and he wanted to write an article or do an article with Zimmer and Peacock about screen printing. And so Andy, in the end, it came to the point that Andy actually did an interview with us, a podcast, and so we did that podcast a couple of weeks ago. If you're interested in it, then there is a link on the ZP website, and as I say, there was a sort of, I think it was a good 20 minutes, at least the podcast was. So if that's something that's interesting to you, it's a bit of a chat about the history of ZP, and please have a listen to it, it might be fun. Something that we put out there this week, we're going to cover this again in our webinar on Thursday. So every Thursday at 8 a.m. London time, we do a webinar for our Developer Zone members. We're going to cover this again in our webinar, but we made we've manufactured a fructose sensor. So fructose is the same molecular formula as glucose, but fructose is a sort of a different structural isomer, and you can isomerize between or convert between fructose and glucose. But we made a sensor that was specific to fructose but wasn't specific to glucose, and we put some data out on the website this week, but it was a little bit confusing for some people, so we've ended up I'm going to end up talking about it in our webinar. It's because essentially the fructose sensor, we tested it, and at the very end then we added a bit of glucose, and it didn't respond to the glucose. But I think that sort of it's caused a little bit of confusion, that some people think that we were testing with glucose, some people appreciate we were testing with fructose. We were testing with fructose, and at the very end of the experiment we just added some glucose, and you didn't get a response. Anyway, so in summary, this week we finished the manufacture of some fructose sensors, and we are really happy with them, and we just made sure that they were specific, and so we did some testing with fructose as well. Some testing with glucose as well. Just a little bit of news. ZP, we're really into making solid state pH sensors, so I'll sort of hold up something that's representative of those solid state pH sensors now. So unfortunately, if you're listening on the podcast, you can't see it, but These are essentially sort of solid state pH sensors. Now we were quite pleased this week because we were doing some testing in our lab, and we sort of saw that the signal was 59 millivolts, and that's almost like perfect, really. That if you're making a ion selective type electrode, and a pH sensor is a form of ion selective electrode, if you can get a gradient of 59 millivolts per pH, that's pretty cool. And actually we did get that. So this week we've been busy making those fructose sensors, and as I say, they were very specific towards fructose and they didn't show reactivity towards glucose, so that was pretty cool. And then we've also been making some pH sensors, and now those were potentiometric, and we got this kind of classic Nernstian behavior of 59 millivolts per pH. And if that's all a little confusing, we do have some quite nice webinars on our YouTube channel about electrochemistry of biosensors, so I hope you can find those. So some other news from Zimmer and Peacock this week, and I'm sorry this has been a sort of a busy week. It's probably worth saying that we have some good friends around the world and some very good people who often view this channel and comment and make nice comments, and it kind of pays off because, you know, if people are supportive and friendly towards us, we try to help people back. And so a pretty cool guy is very interested in coming to the UK, and we've been having a conversation with him, and we've discovered actually there is a source of funding for him to come here and essentially do a postdoc. They're called knowledge transfer partnerships, KTPs, and because he has a PhD already, he can participate in what's called a KTP. So I would say if you're a ZP Developer Zone member and you're interacting with ZP, and you sort of would like to sort of join us or interact with us, it's probably worth taking a look at our website and looking for something called the KTP, the Knowledge Transfer Partnerships. These are kind of UK government schemes, and Zimmer and Peacock we've done one of these already, and we're looking like we're going to do another one, and they're a good way of starting to interact with us, especially if your end goal is actually to maybe get a job with us. So I just want to kind of flag the KTP. Now this week we put out a couple of videos. One was on fabrication of ammonium sensors. So at Zimmer and Peacock we have a really big range of pre-formulations for, in fact I'll have a quick look at it. We have pre-formulations for potassium sensors, sodium sensors, calcium sensors, phosphate sensors, ammonium sensors, nitrate sensors, alcohol sensors, chloride sensors, and then glucose and lactate. And to help, we're a pretty helpful company, and to help some of our clients who have got these formulations, we gave them some quick how-to videos on how to do the addition and sort of get those sensors running. So that was some news we put out there this week. And then in a similar vein, we also did some testing of these ammonium sensors. So it was the same engineer from ZP. We made a little video very similar to the first one, except now rather than fabricating, they were actually doing the testing in the lab. The really good thing about Zimmer and Peacock is, you know, we develop a lot of biosensors. You know, we go on and on about, you know, we're ISO 13485. We're getting to be a medium-sized business. You know, it's sort of 52, at least 52 scientists and engineers full-time now. And we generally have these labs and this equipment, and we're using this material ourselves. And so, you know, when we come online, yeah, I'm getting a quick comment online as well that somebody was just asking me how to prepare analyte for immunosensors. I'm going to quickly say to that, follow us at the ZP Developers Zone, 8 AM on Thursdays. We do live webinars, and I'll message you slightly in YouTube in a minute, and we'll answer the question. But just back to this video log. We not only make these ammonium sensors and teach people how to make these ammonium sensors, we then teach them how to actually gather the data. So I think we're we're a friendly company, and our scientists are real experts because they're generally in there every week, making sensors, testing sensors, and then we're able to advise our collaborators on how to do the same. Now, I think I've just said the word collaboration, and I think it's probably worth saying again, because we put out sort of 3 adverts this week. At Zimmer & Peacock, we're very passionate about science and engineering, but we're broadening now. We want people to come to us who have arts and humanities background, because we want to be a global billion-dollar business, and it's just as important to have skill sets in business administration and business finance. You need to have scientists, you need to have engineers, but you also need people with creative skills. So we've kind of started to broaden out, and we're specifically looking at the University of Plymouth. At ZP we have a lot of very good interactions with many universities. I think the universities we have the strongest connections to are University of Oxford, where we've collaborated with Professor Richard Compton at University of Oxford, UK, quite a lot, and we have very good connections into Swansea University. We have very good connections into Plymouth University, hence why we're specifically looking for students from Plymouth at the moment. We also interact quite heavily with a university in Norway called USN. So anyway, this week we've been asking the students at University of Plymouth to start applying to us. We're also asking the engineering students at the University of Plymouth to apply for us. It's probably worth saying to you that in the UK we are able to recruit quite a lot of students this year to do placements, summerships with us, year outs with us. So I'm sorry if you're not currently in the UK, but I did just make a note that the KTP, the Knowledge Transfer Partnership, is open to people from across the globe, by the way. So that is worth having a look at. And then, as I say, we're also reaching out to Plymouth for the science students as well. I do appreciate the nice comments that are coming across on the YouTube as well as we're live streaming today. So thanks for that, guys. It's nice to see. Some other news from Zimmer & Peacock this week. Quite a few of you now who listen to the podcast and video log may also attend our ZP Developer Zone. I'm actually going to answer the question because we had whilst I was streaming to you, we had I think it's Nilima Mystery has asked a question as how to prepare analyte for immunosensors. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to answer that question by saying every Thursday 8 a.m. London time we do a live webinar for our developers, our ZP Developer Zone members. So please join the ZP Developer Zone. If you join the ZP Developer Zone, there is a forum where you can post questions, and one of our members is online now, Ali, and he knows what we're like, that if you post a question, we will definitely answer it in the members webinar. So if you have a question about things like immunosensors, immunoassays, post a question in our research forum on our ZP Developer Zone, and I promise you we're pretty good. We will do a webinar then every Thursday 8 a.m. London time. You can log in and watch that, and we will definitely answer your questions, because we have actually done quite a few webinars and we've talked about immunoassays quite a bit on that webinar. So we just put out a little note this week that at Zimmer & Peacock we are known for these screen printed electrodes. I mean, we absolutely are, and it's nice that we've got a few of the people who are quite keen to come and work with us in the UK, because one of the things it's not always apparent actually, but we're also really quite good on MEMS and biomems. I mean, ZP is really growing up as a business now, and you come to our facility, it's not just laboratories and inks and pastes. No, there's clean rooms, and in these clean rooms we're dealing with silicon wafers. We're doing very clean, very precise fabrication. I mean, this is one of our pictures in a laboratory. You've got one guy looking under the microscope, obviously. Somebody else seems to be doing electrochemical experiment, and I think somebody else looks like they're working under a hood here. So this is a very industrious lab, and it just says, we don't just do screen printing as a substrate for electrodes. We also, I mentioned earlier on, gold sputtering. We also sputter and make electrodes that way. So we just put a little note out this week about the MEMS. It was just yesterday we made a bit of a video about cables for biosensors. I know it's not the most thrilling topic ever, but cables are a real, a necessity, let's say, in electrochemical biosensors. So we have instruments, we have screen printed electrodes, and you need cables to go between these two. And it can get quite complicated, and we are apologetic for it, but we tried to make a little bit of a video just to help help people navigate through this kind of cable situation, and try and make people's lives a little bit easier. So that was just a little sort of thing that we put out yesterday about cables. We're getting near the end now, but I just want to this was quite nice that we have a very excellent collaboration with a company called Exhalation Technology, and they've actually appeared this week in Chemistry World. So the Royal Society of Chemistry, possibly one of the oldest societies for chemistry in the world, and they actually featured one of our engineers, a picture of one of our engineers holding the Corona check. We get a lot of questions about this. It's like, is it available? Is it a model? No, this is a genuine device, and it can be used to monitor SARS-CoV-2 on the breath. So it's pretty cool, and it's very accurate, and the assay takes about 5 minutes. And of course, it's not one of these assays that's very intrusive, where you're trying to swab somebody's mouth out or anything like that. No, you're literally just collecting the breath. So we just put some news out about that this week because it's pretty cool to be mentioned, in the Chemistry World, which is written by the Royal Society of Chemistry. So that was pretty nice. And then one of the last things we did this week, so at Zimmer and Peacock, we're kind of known for biosensors. It's also worth saying that we apply those biosensors into the food industry. So it's nice to see that Ali's watching the video log this evening, because one of the products that we have at Zimmer and Peacock is something called the chili sensor. I'm not going to sort of play all this videos too much at the moment, but essentially we're able to take chili products, put them onto an electrochemical biosensor, and we're able to measure the capsaicin in there. And if you can measure the capsaicin, then you're essentially measuring the molecule that gives you the sensation of heat, and you can calculate the Scoville heat unit, the SHU. So Zimmer Peacock, we're known for biosensors, we're known for screen printed electrodes, and it's possibly not quite so well known that we also make sensors for food. And one of the interesting things about making a sensor for something like food is that you're sometimes dealing with people's perceptions. So one person tastes something hot and another person doesn't taste quite so hot. So we kind of had to dig into the literature about that, and we, that's what in part what makes ZP a little bit different. That there are an awful lot of PhD scientists and engineers. There's a lot of PhDs in the business. I just hesitate for a second because I've just been asked a question live, and the answer to the answer is the molecule that we're detecting is called capsaicin. So that's the molecule there. But anyway, the way people perceive the hotness of that molecule depends on who you are. So we've read the paper, we made sure we understood it, and then we came away and actually made a little calculator. So depending on whether you, so for example, Tabasco sauce is actually 2,500 Scoville heat units. If you're a normal person, you'll perceive it as a sort of, on a scale, you'll perceive it as a 97, which means you feel it quite hot. But in fact, if you're somebody who actually is more resistant to, let's say, to chili and capsaicin, then you just don't feel it quite the same way, and therefore you'll only perceive it as 61. So I might sort of round up now and just do a little bit of a summary. I appreciate the questions that came through this week, and it was nice that, it was nice to kind of get some feedback. So I will just do a quick kind of roundup and say we are going to, first of all, gold electrodes. At ZP we make them by sputtering, screen printing and PCB manufacturing. There's that podcast you can listen to that might be kind of interesting. It gives you a bit of a history as to why ZP got into screen printing. Please attend the webinar at 8 AM on the Thursday. We will discuss any questions that come through the forum, and we will definitely answer some questions about the fructose sensor that came up this week. It is nice that we've been making some solid state pH sensors, and those of you who are sort of electrochemists know that a perfect Nernstian ion selective electrode should have a slope of 59 millivolts per pH, and we actually got that this week. We've been discussing SARS-CoV-2 on the breath with our good clients, or good collaborations with Exhalation. We've also been making those ammonium sensors. We're also highlighting the fact that if you are interested in working with ZP, and especially if you're coming from abroad, then you can do what's called a KTP between ZP, a university, so it's worth looking at. Don't think that ZP just wants scientists and engineers. We're actually expanding out now. We want the arts and humanities students. We want the more, we want a broad group of people. When you look at ZP, you'll see that we're a very diverse organization, and that means we want, if you want to be a really significant business in this world, you can't just be science and engineering. You do have to think about the arts and humanities as well and bring these skills into your business, and so we are doing that as well. And then just the final part of the summary, we did have a good discussion on electronics this week in the ZP developer zone. We do have this MEMS group with the clean room, so if you ever visit us, it's quite a cool thing to see. And we also were quite happy that the Royal Society of Chemistry did highlight the corona check. That's the SARS-CoV-2 detection on the breath. And as I say, we also did some modelling of people's perception of capsaicin. Because at ZP we do, we have our sensors for medical applications, but we do actually also make a chili sensor, and it it's doing really quite well, so we're quite happy with it. And that was originally licensed from Professor Richard Compton at the University of Oxford. I can see it's 23 minutes past 8 London time. I appreciate you guys very much, and please join the ZP Developer Zone, and we'll see you on Thursday, hopefully for the 8 AM webinar. Alright, cheers guys, take care and have a good evening.